I got 25 lighters on my dresser. Yes. Gots to get paid. Bing, 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 bing. Welcome back to the next episode of Telling on Myself. I am your host. I'm Talia's husband. Y'all know what time it is.
And I'm your co-host, Kendrick's wife.
Sure. And we are... Nah, I'm just joking. I just want
the
to...
Dominic Creoles. It's true. Father figures.
Father figures. I am your father figure. Father figures are very, very, very important. It take me being in my early stages of 30s.
It's early.
Yeah.
Be in the early stages still, okay?
As a full adult with a wife and everything to really start to wrap my head. It's a progressive thing, but I'm progressively just wrapping my head around like, dang, a father figure really is important, especially as I run across homeboys and I see their interactions with their dads, or I meet somebody who is a dad and I see their interactions with their children. Like, it's like, dang, bro, it only makes sense. It's like to not be like that, to not be as involved, as concerned, to care, to really want to guide and mold and push in the right direction. Like to not do that to like one of your seeds it just becomes weirder and weirder. Like to me, it's like, damn, you really got to be like
disconnected.
Man, this something for sure to not want to have that type of active relationship in your kid's life. It's just wild to me. I don't know.
What's been your experience with father figures? Like what from your childhood?
I was adopted, so my great aunt and my great uncle raised me. They were who I consider my parents, my mother and my father. Mm-hmm. My biological dad was locked up. My biological mother was doing her thing wherever she was, and yeah, we had a decent, adult to child type of relationship, so to speak. So I had a respect, for my dad and everything. He just wasn't he wasn't like emotionally connected. Mm-hmm. So we never had any type of like emotional relationship in general. I don't even really feel like I had like an emotional relationship like with my mom either. Like we had something. We had, in my mind, just like a regular relationship. But like I never really like had the whole like emotional connection to a parent. So I never knew that was a thing until adulthood. And like my dad, I don't know, he was just a hard dude. Just any memories, if I'm just being honest, I'm just keeping it a buck. Any memories from my childhood is filled to capacity with always angry, hardly ever smiling or like happy or jolly. There's always a stern mood, stern attitude, fussing. Yeah, like that was the consistency. So if I was gonna learn anything by example, that's what I learned. But it's kind of wild though, because like the joking and all the more lighter part of my actual personality, I still would express it. It would just be in different environments or around like different people or whatever. But like, but overall relationship wise, like it was like that. It wasn't really.
What's your relationship with your biological father as it stands now?
We cool. Like we cool.
Do you consider him a father figure, even though he wasn't around during like the foundational years due to him being, in prison?
Yeah, yeah, he's definitely a father figure. Now as far as like the dynamic of our relationship, I mean, it's really like an older brother type situation. It almost feels like he almost approaches the situation with, because I wasn't able to be there from this time until this time, and that's a decent chunk of time right there, and someone else like stepped in. It's almost like a he don't want to overstep like this unseen boundary to a degree. Yeah. He had moments where hey, now remember now, I'm your daddy now and all that, and that's cool. That's cool. And I respect it. I don't dishonor or not consider his actual position in my life.
What do you think the importance of growing up in a in a household where your father is not only there but also emotionally available, especially for a father to boy relationship?
Man, it is. I can't even overstate it. Like it's dire. Like it's not just important. Oh, that's a pretty strong. No, no, no. It's literally dire. Now, just being a grown man, and like I said, seeing other relationships, whether it be from as a peer, as a child, seeing my friends and their dads, and like seeing an emotional connection, seeing like a dad looking at one of my peers, like their sons, and being like, he might have done something crazy, and he like, man, he just like me though. Like yeah, it's like there's that thing. It's like that recognition of like, man, that's a piece of me. So I can't even be fully mad at him for doing whatever it was that he did or she did, because like I would have done that same thing. I know that that desire exists inside of me. So I'm not going to be as harsh on him. Instead, what I'm going to do is try to just redirect him, because I can relate to him from a certain way. You know, it's like a deeper connect. It's like that deeper connection type situation.
Do you think
And
that affected you because you were since you were adopted?
what? Yeah, yeah, absolutely. When you have that, I'm able to see from, you know, a more mature standpoint at this point in my life, right?
Yeah.
So like when you do have that, you're able to see like how much development, how much confidence, like how much ambition and drive and so on and so forth that is being created. Like you basically create that. Like you help cultivate that. And I guess a better way for me to put it is, with me not feeling like I had like that, now when I look back at my life and I look back at decisions that I've made in life, so on and so forth, even to some varying degrees, some of my thought processes, like now as an adult, I see where not having that cultivated insecurities, bad decision making, lack of confidence, you know, trust issues, lack of boundaries. And then it's like when I create a boundary, it's like, damn, I done overdid the boundary. Like it's never balanced. Like, so you
Yeah.
find lack of balance. From my experience, that's what I can attribute a lot of that to.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I think that the stark difference, like I know you and I grew up differently. You know, I grew up with both of my biological parents, so I understand the looking at your parent and like seeing something that they do and like being like, oh dang, I got some of that, and I'm sure that they've thought the same looking at me, like after I've done something, kind of like, oh yeah, that's a piece of me in that for sure. But I think the importance of having a father figure in my life specifically, and now I feel like I no longer even have a father figure in my life because, you know, dad passed away, and I don't think that I had anyone really else in my life that was kind of like a father figure. But anyway, I think it is important to have, you know, your father. It kind of like gives you that extra confidence just because it's like that man, like that, like, you know, when you look at like a family dynamic, like the man of the house is supposed to be like the one that sets the tone. And my dad, he was just I feel like he was a dreamer, like a visionary. Like he just like wanted to, he was a doctor, but he wanted to be, he always said, I want to be the McDonald's of pediatricians. Like I want to have a clinic in every city, and I want to be this like big grand thing, and I want to travel the world. I want to do all this stuff. And I feel like he's definitely where I got like my dreamer spirit from. He's the reason why I like follow my dreams, and I always like shoot my shot, and I'm always like thinking about crazy, outlandish, outrageous, like it just wouldn't even like really happen. Like how could this even be possible? Because of him. And I don't think if I wouldn't have had that balance, because between him and my mom was definitely the one that was more grouchy all the time. She was always in a bad mood. Like I always had to feel her out before I asked her anything. Like he was like my safe person at home. So I think it was opposite for you. But for me, my dad was like that person that instilled that confidence in me. My mom was the one that was always like making me second guess myself and only wanting to do what she wanted me to do, so I wouldn't have to hear her gripe at me, or like so I wouldn't get in trouble or whatever. So it was always the opposite for me with them. So for me, like definitely having that father figure in my life was like freaking crucial. I don't think I would be doing anything that I'm doing right now had he not been the way that he was towards me.
That's fun. That's funny, because I feel like I'm doing a lot of the things that I do because of the way that they were.
Yeah. Well, that just goes to show it don't matter where, it doesn't matter if it's negative or positive. Like, you are a product of your environment. Like, yes, you have some components of your DNA that, it is true that they say that DNA, when it gets passed down to like your seed or whatever, like parts of you, even like personality traits or things that you would lean into more, comes in through your DNA, on top of the fact that, like, your environment, where you grew up, like how you were raised, etc. So between the combination of those two things, like, you are absolutely going to be acting a certain way or whatever, like once you're grown. And now in this day and age, like, we're the first generation, like millennials, like we're the first generation to ever go to therapy, to even look at mental health as like an important thing to take care of. Our parents, your parents, like, and not even that, because your parents were like your great aunt and uncle. So they were like a generation, they're really the generation before Gen X. So that age gap is even further away from where we are today, as like, gentle parenting has become a thing, and realizing that like spanking, not just spanking, but like hurting your kid, like with belts and wires and things like that's abuse. Like, that's not really healthy for a kid, especially if that's the only way that you like show them that they need to be good or whatever, by just harming them and like instilling violence onto your own kids. Like, that's not ever going to translate to anything, because the only thing they're going to do is grow up and think that violence is the way that you take care of stuff, rather than having conversations, rather than just communicating with your child about, and also apologizing to your child, like letting them know that just because that whole toxic, like, I'm your parent so I know, like, or like, oh, that's your mom, like, it doesn't matter what. I've had people tell me that when like I knew dead, like, my mom was not right in a situation, and I'm like, I don't care that she's my mom. Like, of course I'm always going to respect my elders, I'm not going to talk crazy to them or whatever, to an extent, unless they're talking crazy to me. But it's like, that whole, just because they're your parent, like, we need to remember that our parents, think about like if you and I became parents right now, like, we're still trying to figure ourselves out, our life out, like we're still going through life for the very first time, just like our parents were. So it's crazy when you think of like, just when somebody becomes a parent, now automatically they're like on this level, and we think that they should always do everything right, that they have all the answers and everything else. And it's like, they don't. Like, they're humans, flawed humans, just like we are. And they're not going to be perfect, and they're going to make mistakes. But I think where we messed up was that parents back then, in those times, weren't apologizing to their kids. They weren't letting their kids know, like, hey, like, I shouldn't have done that way. Like, I apologize. Like, I think, you do have a reason to do what you did, or just relate to me, like, hey, I've been there, I've been your age, like, you're gonna make mistakes, just know that it's XYZ. Or even if you have to punish them or whatever, like, whatever your thing is, communication is so key. And I think that's why our generation of parenting is gonna set us light years ahead than what we previously have known.
Yeah, I agree. And I also agree with spanking kids, for sure. I'll never disagree with spanking kids. I'm with you when you mention like the abuse part. Like, there's a difference between spanking a child for correction and explaining to them, like, well, this is why you get a spanking, because you did this, and this is just unacceptable. You can't do this. But also, spankings not being the only means of like, quote unquote, punishing or correcting, because it should always be correcting, like, right, correcting a child, right?
What do you think about spanking? Like, if especially when kids are like little and they're trying to grab things and like, or let's say touching a dog or something, like, I think that would be, because kids sometimes they just like, they look at things that are memorable to them. So if a kid is like messing with the dog's face and stuff, and that can cause the dog to react and like make the dog bite the kid, and the kid is like messing with them, and you just like spank the hand away and like, no, like, and share with them like every time you do this is what you're going to experience. And that starts like training them to like, okay, I'm not going to do that. Like, spankings and stuff for situations like that, to me, or just like no, bad word, you're not supposed to say that, like things like that. Okay, cool. But like, when you're going to the extent of making kids bleed, like, I mean, just like the stuff that I've seen, like, I'm like, bro, yeah, like, that's
the obvious abuse.
Yeah, like the obvious, like, that's, your kid's gonna remember that for sure, but they're not gonna forgive you, or it's gonna be a while before they just forgive you for like hurting them the way that you did, because not only did you not communicate emotionally, mentally at all, like all you did was lash out on them. Because to me personally, if you are going to like inflict pain and like violence onto your kid, like abuse them, that tells me that you're not emotionally intelligent enough to just have a conversation with your kid or explain to them in another way that they can't do that. Like you just resort to violence because that's all, because you're not emotionally intelligent enough.
No. Yeah, I had one. I got a cousin that I know for a fact had a life similar to that. Where I mean, shoot, he let him do something. I mean, that boy getting hit with anything, and it's just ironic that how you mentioned a lot of times people who go through traumatic experiences like that growing up, they generally tend to kind of like lean in that same direction. Like how he came out the way he came out, like just polar opposites of that. I mean, you do still have those stories also, where like some people are like, man, they were so impacted by something that they're driven to just do the total opposite of that.
Yeah.
And so I mean, I think he one of those cases, but I only bring that up really because in my mind, like, damn, that's pretty admirable, you know, to go through circumstances like that and are still able to like see the good in life and to strive for the good in life and to strive for like doing right by people and being a good person in general. Partly because I feel like in my own life, because of traumatic experiences, like I've been driven. I felt that drive to go in the negative directions. You know what I'm saying? And either probably like after having done it, after having gone in that direction, just looking back at it like, damn, man, like, damn, why I do that? Like, man, I wish I wouldn't have done that. I wish I wouldn't have had that urge to follow through with that thing because now I really don't like the results of that, you know? So it just kind of like keep you in like a loop of a rabbit hole. And it's also interesting because like the good scriptures say, you know, you reap what you sow. At the end of the day, you don't reap what you intended to sow. Like you reap what you really sow. So if you out there really sowing destruction, you really sowing negativity, even if the negative thing that you're sowing is in response to something negative happening to you, like an external circumstance, you still sowed it. Like, and so you just keep that repetitious cycle of negativity kind of like circling like around you.
You said something the other day. It was like something intention versus something.
Efforts over intention.
Yeah,
effort over intention, bro. Like
like what you actually do.
Yeah, what you actually do.
Yeah,
over what you know. God don't bless who you pretend to be. God don't bless who you think you are.
Pastor Earl said it too. He said it's not what you meant, it's what you said or what you did.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I didn't mean that. And I know, like you and I
all the time. You know what I mean? No, I know what you said.
He always tells me, yeah, but you know what you said. I'm like, or you know what you did or whatever. And I'm just like, yeah, but that wasn't the intention. I may have just worded it wrong or gone about it the wrong way. Because I was maybe trying to avoid, usually trying to avoid the very reaction that I get from, you know, my intentions not really aligning with what actually happened or what actually, you know. So shoot, be careful. Be careful with what you do, because people more than half the time are not going to know what your intentions were. They're going to know how whatever you said or did made them feel. And that's what they're going to go off of.
Yeah. But we also live in a culture in which like you can offend people with your actions. And like once they express, oh, well, I was offended by that, the offender is now offended.
Right.
Bro, this offense happened because of you, bro. Like you initiated the offense. I voiced that I was offended. And then when I did that, now you're offended that I had a voice.
Yeah.
To say that I'm offended by you. So as an adult, one thing that I've been able to do in my own journey of trying to both mature and like understand myself, understand people around me, etc. When I look back at like my own situation, even with my dad or my great uncle, I don't have any animosity towards him. I don't have any ill will or anything like that. I understand where he comes from, right? I understand the times that he grew up in. so on and so forth. So I take those things into consideration. I take my biological dad for another example. I consider him. I consider his environment. I consider his experiences, so on and so forth. So I get it. I understand more of who they are, and I did that intentionally. I sought that type of understanding so that I wouldn't feel any type of real negative way, or I wouldn't allow any negative feelings to continue to linger, if at all possible.
Right.
Because of some of the experiences that I associate them with,
Yeah.
individually. We cool now. We could, like, as an adult, like we have the best relationships now than we've ever had in my life.
Yeah, so it's
We're both.
possible. So if you're listening and you're struggling with having a relationship with your father figures or even mother figure, like just anyone that had a part in raising you, and you now that as an adult you feel like, man, like I wish things would have been different. But I think understanding where they come from, and I say this from experience because for my mom, I had a lot. My mom and I butted heads a lot, so growing up, I never thought that her and I could have the relationship that we have now, which is a much better one. But it's because I took the time to understand where she came from, like her upbringing, why she's the way that she is, the era that she grew up in, which didn't allow her to seek the help that she probably needed, or even knowing that she even needed to seek help. I feel like it's definitely helped me understand and put myself in their shoes and give them the grace, give her the grace that I would want to be given, because at the end of the day, like we said earlier, like we're all living and going through life at the same time as our parents and as the people that we look up to. That's why you don't put, what did your shirt say the other day? No idols. That's why you don't idolize people and you don't put them on a pedestal, because even your favorite pastor at your church is a human.
Yeah, empathy and sympathy. Yeah, being able to empathize and sympathize with others, and considering their experiences and their mindsets and ideologies, and all of that. All of those things are pretty vital to not only understanding them, but understanding why they would have made some of the decisions that they made, etc. But then also putting yourself in that same predicament, like, well, if that was my circumstances, like,
Right.
what's the likelihood that I probably would have did something similar, if not worse,
Right. Exactly.
more often than I did something better,
Yeah.
given the same set of circumstances. Hey, y'all, thank y'all for tuning in to another edition of Telling on Myself. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.
And we'll see you on the next one.
Peace.